Hey, slave. Take care of this. John chuckled smugly and insulted me further, throwing his dress suit at me. The suit hit me, causing water to spill.
Ah.
Wipe it up, will you? And bring me another glass of water now. Drunk as he might be, or perhaps because of it, his true feelings were apparent. John thought of me as nothing more than a slave. I threw the dress suit into the laundry bag with all my might. Then, I noticed something sticking out of the suit pocket. I picked it up, unfolding the crinkly, tightly folded paper. He said to take care of it, so I'll do just that. More than wondering why such a thing existed, I felt as if this was my ticket to freedom. It seemed like an escape from all the irritation and dissatisfaction I felt towards John. I rushed out of the house, and then, submitted that divorce notice to the office. My name is Vanessa Owen. I am currently 50 years old and have 2 children. My firstborn is a girl, Nicole, followed by my son, Matt. I never got along with John's parents since we started dating. It seemed like they didn't like me from the start. Nevertheless, I loved John and believed I could be happy with him. My parents were concerned and opposed our marriage, but I overruled them and we eloped. Then we started living together in a small apartment. But John was always unhappy about our elopement-style marriage. He would always nag, "Did you really have to leave your parents for this marriage?" However, there was a good reason why we rushed into marriage. Nicole was already on her way. Of course, John knew this. The main reason my parents opposed the marriage was that John never formally introduced himself. I don't intend to blame John for this. I have my faults, and I've never liked his parents, who always criticized me. Right now, we should be thinking only about the child we're expecting, not pushing responsibilities onto each other or regretting the past. There's no way to know now. If we become happy, our parents will surely accept us. I always said this to admonish John. But even so, John kept on berating me, saying things like, "I should never have married you," or "Your cooking is worse compared to my mother's." With nowhere to return after our elopement, I endured John's nagging every day. Despite everything, John adored our children. Nicole takes after Vanessa, which is a shame, but Matt is handsome like me. He was especially fond of our son, Matt, always saying this with satisfaction. Though he always added unnecessary remarks, I knew he also cared for Nicole. I always cautioned him about his words, but indeed, our children kept our marriage together. When the kids were in high school, John was promoted to department head. Our marital relationship wasn't good, we hardly spoke unless someone else was present. Our family was barely functioning, but John had a good reputation outside the house and was highly trusted by his colleagues. After becoming a director, he often brought his juniors and subordinates home, including a male subordinate named Rob and a female subordinate, Gina Manning. I became familiar with both of them through repeated interactions, and they were always nice to me. I can see that the director can work with peace of mind because he has a wonderful wife. John's subordinates and juniors said things like this to honor him. Not at all.
Yeah.
I could divorce her anytime, but she won't let me go. One day, at a gathering, I frowned at John's words. These words from John made me realize they were his true feelings. "You're just joking. But saying that shows you have a good relationship." I'm envious. But I forced a smile to go along with the subordinates who thought it was a joke. John's laughter was infuriating. Flattered, John got carried away, saying things like, "My son is handsome like me." Or, "I could have married someone prettier but drew a short straw." Insulting me and bragging until he passed out drunk. After that, the subordinates helped with the cleanup. "You don't have to do this, leave it." No. I'm always grateful to the director. Everyone was considerate towards me, saying things like that. As we cleaned up in a friendly atmosphere, Gina spoke up. The director actually praises you at work. Really? I can't believe it. Laughing, I said that, and Gina added. It's true. He always says his family gets along well. The president admires that too. The president? Yes. The president values family. In that regard, the director is always praising his family. So the president says to everyone else to learn from him. That kind of joke earlier only works if there's a good relationship, right? Gina seemed tipsy and happily chatted away about John's behavior at work. If that's true, that's good. I repeated a forced smile and muttered just that. Trust was long gone between us. I quickly realized that John was just saying those things to make himself look good. I've heard that good liars mix a bit of truth in their lies. John was probably deceiving his colleagues in the same way. I didn't know if it was his nature or a calculated move, but this made me truly despise John. I disliked how he shamelessly used the family as a facade. But our children were still students, and I wanted them to go to college. As John said, thinking of the children, I couldn't divorce him. However, John had never brought up divorce either. We were just living life without making waves. In this life, our children grew up honest and cheerful. Nicole graduated from a local university and joined a nearby company, commuting from home. 3 years later, Matt, who had left home for university, also found a job locally and decided to return home. I was genuinely happy that the children were coming back. And when both became working adults, it felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. Then, another happy event occurred. Mom, I'm thinking of getting married. Nicole, in her 3rd year of working, told me this. Her partner was a senior at her company, Chris Adams. He had visited us, a fine young man who had spent his childhood overseas. He seemed very intelligent. John was happy about the marriage too, and Nicole quickly started preparing for it. The wedding was to be a casual garden wedding. Usually, I'd wear a formal dress, and John would wear a morning suit. But guests were told to dress casually. So, it was decided that I would wear a simple dress and John would be fine in his existing suit. Despite everything, I wanted to honor Nicole's special day, so I carefully chose a dress. I thought about getting a new suit for John, but he insisted that the one he already had was fine. Reluctantly, I brushed and mended John's suit, looking forward to the wedding. On the wedding day, blessed with good weather, the ceremony began. Surrounded by beautiful greenery and flowers. Rob and Gina, John's colleagues who had always been kind to Nicole and Matt, attended the wedding, and I thanked them for coming. At the reception, a stand-up party, I spent a happy time greeting Nicole's friends and colleagues. John seemed to be enjoying himself, but perhaps getting too drunk. He started commanding, "Hey, Vanessa. Get me a drink." Waiters were walking around the venue. It was embarrassing that he had to call out to me, who was far away, instead of just looking around. "Mrs. Owen, I'll go for you." Rob and Gina supported me, entertaining John. Especially Gina, who stayed by John's side like a wife. I felt uneasy about it but was busy greeting other guests, so I left John to them. It was a beautiful ceremony. The wedding ended successfully, and Gina took care of a heavily drunk John until the end. When the taxi arrived, she said, "John, your taxi is here," and helped him into the car. I also got into the taxi and spoke to her. "Thank you, Gina. Take care." "No, thank you. Looks like it's going to be a long night." "Take care." I took her words as a reference to the drunk John and laughed. However, her gaze was not on John but me. I felt strange again, but I said,
"Goodbye,"
and returned home with John. Nicole and Matt went to the after party, leaving just the two of us. In the taxi, John seemed a bit more cheerful after a nap. When we got home, he walked in on his own. Usually, we didn't talk much, but John, more drunk than usual, couldn't stop talking. Finally, the kids are off our hands. I was worried about Nicole turning out like you, but I'm glad she got married. While belittling me as usual, John lay on the sofa. Vanessa, water. And then, he arrogantly ordered me around. I sighed inwardly and went to get him water. Here's your water. Take off the suit if you're going to sleep, it'll get wrinkled. I said that and put the water on the table. John, getting up, said as he undressed. You're really useful. You do everything I say. Useful? That's no way to speak, even if you're drunk. Hey, slave. Take care of this. John chuckled smugly and insulted me further, throwing his dress suit at me. The suit hit me, causing water to spill. Wipe it up, will you? And bring me another glass of water now. Drunk or not, it must be his true feelings. John thought of me as a slave. I was so angry that I couldn't move. But the anger didn't last long. Seeing John snoring loudly in front of me, I surprisingly felt nothing. I realized that I had become indifferent to John, lacking even hatred or love. Afterward, I picked up the suit that John had carelessly thrown aside. As if I were performing a routine task. I noticed his trousers had also been discarded and picked them up. Feeling irritated again as I stood before the bag for dry cleaning, I angrily threw the suit into the bag with all my strength. That's when I noticed something sticking out of the suit's pocket. What? I muttered to myself, surprised, and pulled it out. It was a piece of paper, crisply folded. As I unfolded it, I had to cover my mouth in shock. At that moment, I remembered Gina's words about the night being long. So, that's what she meant. Realizing this, a smile involuntarily formed on my lips. He said to take care of it, so I should, right? I could hear the excitement in my voice. The piece of paper in front of me, which had come out of John's suit pocket, was a divorce notice, already filled out by John.
Yeah.
That must be it. He meant for me to submit it, so I will. More than wondering why it was there, I felt like it was my ticket to freedom. It seemed like an escape from all my irritation and dissatisfaction with John. It was still 8 p.m. The dry cleaners were still open. I grabbed the dry cleaning and the divorce notice and rushed out of the house. After dropping off the suit at the cleaners, I headed straight to the government office. Please, take this. I went to the 24-hour service desk and, with a smile, handed over the hastily completed divorce notice. Then, I hurriedly packed my things. Taking only what I needed, I left the house, John still snoring loudly. For the time being, I decided to stay at a hotel, soaking in a large bath and sleeping in a comfortable bed until morning. However, the next morning, my phone had several missed calls, all from John. It had been so long since he called Mel. We usually communicated via messages if needed. It surprised me that my number was still in John's phone. Yes? Where are you? Just as I was thinking about it, another call came in. Reluctantly, I answered, and John's panicked voice came through. He must have been surprised to wake up and find me gone. After all, the spilled water was still there, a clear sign of something amiss. Where? I'm at a hotel. A hotel? We came home together, didn't we? The water is still spilled, and your clothes are gone. What's going on? From his words, it was clear he didn't remember what he had said the previous day. I sighed and said, You told me to send the suit to the cleaners, right? Well, there was a completed divorce notice in it. I thought that meant I should submit it, so I did. What? What do you mean? Exactly what I said. I've submitted the divorce notice, so we're strangers now. Thanks for everything. As I spoke, John began to yell on the other end of the phone. What? How dare you do something so reckless? Do you realize what you've done? I was surprised by his reaction, but no matter how angry John got on the phone, it didn't bother me. You're so loud this early in the morning. I'm about to have breakfast at the buffet.
Bye.
Probably there was nothing to eat at home. Since I always prepared breakfast every morning, there was neither bread nor cereal stocked up. Nicole was likely at the hotel given as a wedding gift. And Matt wouldn't wake up until afternoon, having probably stayed out late drinking. John must be panicking alone in a house without food. With that thought, I savored my delicious breakfast. After breakfast, I immediately went to look for an apartment at a real estate agency. I didn't have the luxury of choice. I needed to find a place to move into quickly, but fortunately, I found an apartment just a few blocks down from Nicole's new place. Moreover, the real estate agency was hiring part-time staff. I found both a home and a job that day and felt very grateful to the company. On my way back to the hotel, I received a call from Matt. Mom, where are you? Dad's making a fuss. I had been ignoring calls from John, so he must have forced Matt to call me. Matt's voice still sounded sleepy. I've divorced your father. I'm leaving the house, so take care. What? What do you mean all of a sudden? Matt sounded surprised by my words. Anyway, I needed to explain everything properly to my children. I decided to call Nicole that day and explain everything at the house. Why did you suddenly call me here? Nicole looked anxious. Understandably so. Yesterday was the peak of happiness. But today she was called to the house for something serious. She must have known it wasn't just a casual conversation. I felt sorry for her, but my parenting days were over. Being a parent is forever, but I want to live as a person, not as anyone's slave. I shouldn't feel ashamed for this. Even though I thought this, I couldn't shake off the guilt towards my children. A sudden divorce, what do you mean? Divorce. Both of them questioned me simultaneously, and even John, taking advantage of the situation, joined in. That can't be true, right? Convince her. Despite being the root cause of the issue, John played the victim. It was turning into a 3-against-1 situation. I wanted the children to understand that this divorce wasn't just my whim. All I did was submit the divorce papers that your father had already filled out. Why am I being treated like the villain when it was your father? Who had prepared them in the first place? Hearing this, Nicole and Matt turned their gazes to John. John, caught off guard, frantically searched for an excuse. A villain? Come on. That was just a joke, right? Who would actually submit that? A joke? Do you have any idea how much that a joke has worn me down? John flinched at my loud voice. Nicole and Matt clammed up, exchanging looks. Besides, for a joke, it was too well prepared, don't you think? To me, it looked like something prepared to convince someone. John turned red and argued back, spitting out his words. His panicked state made the children realize something was amiss. I couldn't help but burst into laughter at John's behavior. No need to get so worked up. It's like you're admitting it's true. What? You set me up. You're the one who got angry at my deduction. Listening to our conversation, Nicole cautiously asked a question. What do you mean? I decided it was time to tell them everything. Well, you're not children anymore, so I have to tell you. Your father and Gina are having an affair. What are you talking about? John turned pale and stood up. Nicole and Matt looked shocked at first, but then directed looks of contempt at John. I found it strange. She used to call him a director, but recently it's been a John. And her words about our happy family felt insincere. That can't be. While she said she envied us, it felt like she was mocking us. A woman's intuition is often right. John was sweating unnaturally, unable to make any excuses. His behavior only confirmed my suspicions. While it was a shock, it was more about betrayal than lost love, which allowed me to keep my composure. But what really kept me sane was my role as a mother. To think she was invited to the wedding. "I'm sorry, Mom." Nicole started crying. John looked hurt by her words, but he had no right to feel hurt, and Nicole shouldn't feel responsible. I only became sure of it yesterday. "It's not your fault, Nicole." I comforted Nicole as I said this. Matt sighed deeply, giving John a sharp look. "I knew Mom and Dad weren't close, but this is too much." John's voice trembled pitifully. "I had no choice. She kept pressuring me for a divorce. And I had to invite her to Nicole's wedding to convince her. Even the divorce papers. You used me. Otherwise, she said she'd tell the president about the affair." Anger made my fists tremble. After our divorce, she wanted to become John's next wife and take my place as Nicole's mother. So, she had to attend the wedding. That's why he reluctantly invited her, planning to initiate the divorce afterward. Showing her the completed divorce notice as proof. "I never intended to really divorce you." "It's true." "Sure. You never intended to let go of your slave, did you?" "What are you saying? I never thought of you that way." John desperately pleaded, but Matt interjected. "But Dad, you always said it would be easy to marry a woman who obeyed everything like Mom does." "What? You always belittled Mom but never divorced her because you thought it was convenient for you." I stood up. "Is there any reason I should stay married to this man?" Nicole and Matt shook their heads firmly. "Mom, you deserve to be free." "That's right. And you'll always be our mom, even if Dad becomes a stranger." Nicole wiped her tears and smiled through her sniffles. After that, we left the house. Matt, not wanting to stay with John, decided to move into my apartment. The divorce papers were already submitted. We still had to sort out the property division, but I was relieved to distance myself from John. A month later, one of John's subordinates, Rob, visited the real estate agency where I had started working. "Huh? Aren't you Director Owen's wife?" "Rob, thank you for coming to Nicole's wedding the other day. What brings you here today?" "Actually, I broke up with my girlfriend and thought about a fresh start. Maybe moving to a new house." Rob smiled awkwardly as he sat down in front of me. "Oh, I see." I had heard about Rob's girlfriend a few times. He seemed to care for her deeply, but it must not have worked out. Wanting to cheer him up, I responded with a smile. "We found a suitable place. But since it was lunchtime and the person in charge of viewings was out, we scheduled a viewing for another day." "By the way, when did you start working here?" Director didn't mention anything about it. "No, really? We got divorced." "What?" "But last week at the dinner with the president, John was talking about planning a family trip." Rob was shocked, and so was I. John was still spreading such nonsense. He would undoubtedly continue using the family to get closer to the president if I stayed silent. I decided to tell Rob the whole story. "John and Gina? That's unbelievable." Rob turned pale. His reaction was oddly striking. He slowly opened his mouth. "My girlfriend was Gina." "Gina? Gina Manning?" I gasped, not expecting that Rob and Gina had been dating. Rob muttered, "I can't forgive them." I silently watched him. "Mrs. Owen, I can't forgive the two of them." I'll inform the president. His determined gaze met my nod of agreement. I felt the same way. I refused to be manipulated by John any longer. Rob left the shop, saying he'd come back for the viewing another time. He had my contact information from Nicole's wedding. I was sure he would contact me eventually. That day, after work, as I was heading home, Rob contacted me immediately. "Mrs. Owen." I told the president. His voice was much more energetic than the time we met, made me smile. The president was furious. Betraying his family and having an affair with a subordinate. Both of them will be dealt with. Really? That's great. Now we won't be used by them anymore. Those two deceived everyone, the family, the staff, even the president. They were called into the president's office right after I left. Imagining the scene, I couldn't help but smile. Even though they were no longer a part of my life, I couldn't accept them getting away scot-free. "Thank you, Rob. You will surely find happiness." I said this to Rob, feeling like it was something I also wanted to hear. Eventually, John and Gina's affair spread throughout the company. Especially John, who had always boasted about his happy family life, turned out to be a scoundrel who preyed on a subordinate. He was demoted 3 ranks from director to an ordinary employee. At home, he had no family waiting for him. For a man over 50, it would be interesting to see how he would live from now on. Gina resigned, probably due to the scrutiny. She was about 35 years old. A pitiful woman, unemployed in her mid-30s after meddling with a married man. Their relationship also ended. Such an unhealthy affair was never going to last. Gina had pleaded with Rob, but he firmly rejected her, feeling relieved. His reaction made me feel relieved too. Afterward, I continued to live peacefully with Matt in our apartment. 2 years later, Matt told me he was getting married. Just when I thought I'd be alone, he said, "Mom, let's live together." Now, I'm looking forward to the birth of my grandchild, living with Matt and his wife. Nicole is also doing well as a mother of one. And the fact our family keeps growing brings me joy. I reached out to my elderly parents, whom I hadn't spoken to in a while, to told them about the divorce. They said, "Bring the kids over sometime," and I felt endlessly sorry and grateful to them. I plan to make up for my past mistakes by being filial to my parents. And continue to be a reliable mother. Always there to help my children.